Live from the hippest spot online, you've arrived at the Pop Culture Juke Joint, the only weekly podcast you'll need for intelligent showbiz chats. Located just up the street from the Peach Pit and down that dark, damp alley behind Fonzie's garage, you'll find former newsman and current hard-boiled crime writer Anthony Venutolo, chatting with guests about everything from old-school classics to new-school staples. So head up to the bar, grab a drink, and settle in here at the Pop Culture Juke Joint. Now, your host, Anthony Venutolo.
Welcome to another episode of the Pop Culture Juke Joint, where each week we take a deep dive into one particular aspect of pop culture, be it TV, books, music, media, comics, you name it. We've been away a little while, and I want to apologize to everyone. Sometimes life just takes over. But we're back, and this week I am joined once again by co-host Jack Lugo and my compatriot, former partner in crime, Vicki Hyman, who knows a hell of a lot about pop culture. We're going to be talking about The Deuce, the TV series set in and around Times Square in the early 70s. It's an HBO drama given to us by David Simon of The Wire fame and his frequent collaborator George Pelecanos. The show tells the story of the legalization and the rise of the porn industry in the gritty, dirty 70s when Manhattan was just a battleground. The show's title obviously is derived from the lullaby of Broadway, so to speak, the nickname for 42nd Street between 7th and 8th Avenue. The show stars James Franco, Maggie Gyllenhaal, Chris Bauer, Gary Carr, Chris Coy. It's a great cast. And I'm sure I'm leaving out one or two. We're going to chat about the entire series and where we think it might be headed for season 2 because HBO did review the series for a second season. So sit back, relax, grab that drink, enter the juke joint. So, Jack, we have a great guest again today.
Yes, we do. Vicki, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad you think I'm a great guest.
Of course, Vicki, you and I have done this about 50-something times.
I know, but you yell at me all day long, Anthony. I'm just surprised that you're so pleased to hear from me this evening.
Oh, Vicki, why do you have to share our secrets? All right, we're going to talk about The Deuce tonight, the ambitious HBO drama from David Simon. Usually all you have to do is say David Simon, HBO, and I'd say I'm in. Even that thing that he did last year with Yonkers and the low cost housing with what's his name?
Is that
Oscar Isaac.
Yeah.
No, the one in Yonkers.
Yeah.
Based on the councilman who is trying to make Yonkers a better place, and I don't want to spoil it for you. It's very sad.
Let me just say, let me just say, going into it, I said, there's no way I could watch this, right? But David Simon made that really interesting, if not for the use of the Bruce Springsteen on the soundtrack every hour.
Oh, yeah,
so.
that was great.
But he's back now with The Deuce, and it tells the story of 42nd Street in the 70s and the rise of the porn industry. And I gotta say, I'm in because it was such a gritty, great atmosphere for a drama, and that time in New York was really, really storied. So right off the bat, I just want to get your thoughts. I know Vicki hates it, but
I don't hate it. I don't hate it. But can I ask a question?
Sure.
Am I the only person who didn't realize that the Deuce means 42nd Street?
Well, Vicki,
that's the reference? Am I the only person who didn't realize that till the last episode?
Yeah, it's 42nd Street between 8th and 9th
I
Broadway.
had no idea. I'm sorry.
Vicki,
no idea. And I grew up here.
Yes, Vicki, are you joking? You really
I'm
didn't
not
know
joking.
That?
I didn't know that.
Okay.
I've never heard that before.
Wait a minute. So as they're referring to during the show, The Deuce, What did you think they were talking about?
I don't know. I guess I honestly don't know. It wasn't until like they hit it over the head with like, forget it, Jake, it's Chinatown, kind of like, it's the Deuce. At the end, I was like, they're talking about 42nd Street.
Oh, Vicki,
I'm sorry.
I am so, you know what? I'm rarely disappointed in you.
Should I hang up now? Should I just hang up and go away?
No, do not hang up, but
No.
you just lost a couple critic points with me. Just a couple.
I didn't have that many to begin with.
No, you did, but I'm sure you'll earn them back by the end of the show. Jack, what did you think just overall? Like, if you were meeting someone, what would you tell them about the Deuce in terms of like, should they watch it or not? Like, what do you think?
Well, Times Square, 70s. When I think of like that area and that period, I kind of think that, at least the contemporary films from that era, I kind of think of two New Yorks. I think of the New York of Martin Scorsese that we saw in Taxi Driver, and then I also think of Woody Allen's New York from his films from that era, and they're almost like two completely different cities. And I'm just fascinated by finding out more about what life was like for that time, for these, and then we explore these characters, the street life and the rationales for why they engage in this in this life. I just thought it was fascinating.
Would you recommend this to the average TV viewer? Yes or no?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, Vicki, I know you're not. You're on the fence a little bit, I think.
I've been thinking about this, ever since the show started. Like, why am I not in love with the show? Because I love The Wire, I love Treme, and especially with The Wire, this has like sort of the same elements, like these really great lived-in characters, and this that are all wrapped up in this sort of like sociological treatise that you don't even realize that's what it is when you're watching it. But for me, I just, maybe it's the subject matter that just left me a little cold. I wasn't as into it, and I was really bothered by Candy's character, which we can talk about a little bit later. But it was Maggie Gyllenhaal's character, and she really bothered me. Do you want me to get into this now, or should we wait?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think first of all, spoilers. Second of all, I take it you're not buying the whole hooker with the eye of D.W. Griffith.
No, I mean like the porn Yoda of 42nd Street. I don't get it. First of all, I mean, as a character, she is. I mean, it's interesting that she's out on the street with no pimp. She wants to keep her money, which is great. You don't really get any backstory on her until this very last episode, where they're sort of hinting at she had like a horrible father, I guess. Right. She has a kid who she visits, somewhere outside New York. But it's like she's really smart. This is New York in the 70s. It doesn't cost that much to live there. I don't understand why she can't just get an office job. I know this is so nitpicky. That's what I do.
But it's
like, why is she in the sex industry? She doesn't seem to like particularly enjoy it.
Well, we spoke about this at lunch, I think, a few days ago, where we were like, yeah, she could be working at, Sterling Cooper, for God's sakes. There's no we don't know the reason why she feels a need to walk the streets.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get exactly what she's saying. Yeah, because you don't really know enough about the I guess the conflict with the parents or with the father in particular, but you get the sense that this was a life that she chose, not necessarily a life that she had to get into.
Yes. And I don't know why she chose it.
Right. Well,
and I appreciate the fact that, she is using her skills to become basically this porn auteur, which I'm also not quite buying. I know it's based on like a real person, like a porn actress who became a director. I find these scenes the scenes when she's like talking about like motivation, just like too sociologically rich. For these characters, for everybody who's talking about it.
Vic,
I don't buy it.
You're being a buzzkill.
I'm sorry.
Well, there's an interesting review that I read on Wired that pretty much says that the show, I mean, on the surface, you would think the average person would think it's about sex, but it really is about like capitalism and like the street life of that time. And in a way, like I didn't watch The Wire, but I read that pretty much The Wire kind of explored the drugs in a similar way that this show
explored how all these different institutions are failing the city of Baltimore. And I agree. I mean, it's like with the show, you're seeing the legitimization basically of the porn industry, which went from like something that is on the streets, and it was like in these like little things around these little stores around 42nd Street and Times Square, and then the mob takes an interest in it. The cops are paid off, and it takes it off the streets, and it starts making money for everybody except for the black pimps, which I also thought was very interesting. And I liked all those three characters, Larry and Cece and poor Reggie.
Right.
I thought they did a great job with them, and they did those scenes were probably among my favorites when they're talking about like how to make it work and how to hustle, and then at the very end when they see that maybe this life is being taken away from them.
Everybody kind of references The Wire because that's the easy way to go here. But if you've watched Tremaine, as I know you have, Vicki, this show really feels a little bit not more like that, but you can see where this show kind of mirrors that a little bit because it really is about the fabric of that community, and this is a community unto itself. The area of the Deuce. We're not seeing a lot of this show. Well, I was gonna say the show is violent, but I don't know. Other than that one scene with the pimp, I think in the first episode.
Oh no, there are women being brutalized from Ruby falling out the window, being pushed out the window, to Maggie Gyllenhaal's character being beaten up horrifically.
I forgot about that. Yes.
To Cece holding the knife to Ashley, threatening her when she starts getting a little pissy with him. I mean, there's a lot of really disturbing things.
Yeah. So would you?
So I guess I mean, I think that what Vicki is struggling with is what the allure of this life is to these characters, and I think the show is good about they don't make judgments of like you're not. The show doesn't judge the characters; it just presents them as they are.
I agree.
And I think that it welcomes the audience to kind of do the same. I mean, we're kind of exploring, what the characters' lives are within the context of this era, and and the street life and stuff. So I get what you're saying is that I think Maggie Gyllenhaal's character could have avoided this entirely. It doesn't really present what the allure is, but in the sense that this is where she ended up, and the show is doesn't want us to judge, and that the whole point is we want to explore the fabric of the sex industry, and what why these characters are kind of engaged. They each have their own rationales for engaging with it.
Let's chat a little bit about James Franco, because
I knew you're going to. You're in love with him.
I love him. Let me just explain why I'm fascinated by this character. Number one,
Vincent.
Well,
not Frankie.
I'm going to say both, like both characters, or let's say his involvement in this show. I wasn't particularly excited when I found out he was in the Deuce.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons. I'm sorry, James Franco.
Well,
he just overextended himself, and everybody got really tired of him.
Well, no, you're right, because he was everywhere. He was writing books, and then he's directing a movie, and then he's in a cologne ad, and then he's hosting the Oscars, and he's in stoner movies, and then he's in The Interview, and
General Hospital.
Yeah. And then I was skeptical about him playing twins, because we just saw twins in Fargo. And it could come off as a gimmick, but I thought that they did a pretty good job of avoiding the whole gimmicky aspect of having him play twins.
Okay, so all this being said, I was like, oh no, James Franco, he's going to destroy the legacy of David Simon. But I got to tell you, man, I couldn't have been more wrong, because he was able to take these two characters and give them distinct personalities where you can eat, you know which one is on the screen.
Oh, absolutely.
At any given time. And these guys, they both have mustaches. Okay, which made it even harder.
They look exactly the same.
They look exactly the same.
In Fargo, Ewan McGregor had different makeup for each character, so but with James Franco, he had the same look for each of the characters.
It really was a testament to, I think, his ability as an actor. So I was wrong. There, and to add to that, I just think that the characters themselves were really well written. I mean, I think Vince is, I'd say, the half moral staple of the show. I mean, he's a decent fellow, right? What would you say?
I would say mostly, but I was bothered by the fact that he never saw his children, or at least we never saw him seeing his children. It bothered me. I'm sorry.
Well,
because he didn't seem like a bad guy, but then I'm like, he's just not ever going to see his children again.
You know what? I'm not going to get into the sociological aspect of that, but you know what? I'm sure deep down in his heart of hearts, when he's laying in bed next to his girlfriend, he really feels bad about not seeing his kids.
Or maybe
you think that's what he's thinking about?
Probably
next to Margarita Levieva?
Maybe not. Is that her name? I love her even more.
I can understand why we don't, because the show tries to get to so much that it would be hard to like cut away to a scene with his kids that really doesn't have to do with the rest of the episode.
You saw a little bit of that in the first and second episode.
Yeah.
And I think as he got more estranged from his wife, and as more time passed, it just, and plus, don't they live in like Brooklyn?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, there's a subway.
Vic, you're getting on that nitpicky thing again.
Well, I kind of read. I mean, I've read a couple things. Like one of the things I read that they were going for was Scorsese's Mean Streets, where you have one character, the responsible one, and the other the other character, kind of the reckless one who's in debt to the mafia and all that. But then there was an interview also where it seems like the twins were actually based on real twins that kind of did this, had the same background as Vincent and Frank. That basically when they were working on Treme, this guy who I guess was the model for Vinny. Came up to them and I guess they found out all these kind of stories, and he was actually a twin, and so I guess it's based on that. I had a conversation with a friend who said, oh well, the Frankie character is totally unnecessary. They should have just had one character, but I thought James Franco pulled it off. Like you said, even without different makeup or without any kind of accessories to kind of tell you which character is which. You knew which character was on screen each time.
And I'm going to go on record and say there hasn't been that cool of a smoker on TV since since Don Johnson in Miami Vice. That's all I'm going to say about that.
I'll take your word for it.
Okay, Vicki.
There was a lot of smoking going on.
There was. I talked to Vicki about this a little, actually not a little bit, a lot, Jack, about Pippolo. What's his name?
Rudy Pippolo, Michael Rispoli.
Yeah, Michael Rispoli. And let me just say, this guy, you know what?
Respectfully.
Respectfully, Mr. Pippolo. Respectfully.
Respect.
I got to say, really, seriously, I don't like this guy's portrayal as, a capo or a mob heavy. And I know he's like the go-to guy for all these organized crime films, and he was in The Sopranos, and thank God, thank God he was not cast as Tony Soprano as he almost was.
That would have been a disaster. Yeah.
I just think he is the caricature of the gangster. And I don't like his portrayal. And I hope he gets better. Well, not who gets better. He is who he is. I mean, you're really. But I don't. Maybe it's the character.
It's kind of like a central casting kind of thing, where, if you see him in the film, you know exactly what kind of character he's playing.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was almost like that's honestly, may God, may he rest in peace. I felt the same way about Frank Vincent whenever he showed up as a gangster. Mm-hmm. It was the same thing, and that's kind of how I feel about Michael Rispoli. But other than that,
Well, I think he's supposed to represent the Gambino, or one of the Gambino capos, because I know there was this minor conflict we saw that where they might have been infringed on the Genovese territory.
Yep.
In one scene, I forgot which episode. But yeah, I guess they could have casted someone who maybe wouldn't bring about that exact kind of, but I guess for that character, he didn't really, that was his role, so
right.
it tells you automatically who he is as soon as you see him. So maybe that's what, was necessary, or, what they were going for.
But, for every Michael Rispoli, we get a Ralph Macchio. So
yeah,
right?
Yeah, he was a surprise. Yeah, and he wasn't in the series a whole lot. But you do notice him when he's there, and I love the scene where he, when he gets to shake down the massage parlor or the brothel, and I guess the episode was named after what he says, "Old Reservoir" or whatever. He was good in this. It was, I guess it's because I haven't seen him in much.
No,
not recently.
Can I tell you a Ralph Macchio story?
Sure.
Please.
Yeah. All right. So as you know, if you live in the tri-state area, you know a lot about what is the extravaganza called Chiller Theater. Vicki knows what that is, and it's kind of like the local horror con. It's huge, and they just had one, in fact, over the weekend. So one year, I decided to go, and who's there but Ralph Macchio. And Ralph looks like he doesn't want to be there. Ralph looks like he's just miserable, okay? And I'm with my buddies, and we go up to the table, and they're like, you know what? We're going to get Ralph Macchio's autograph, okay? Do I have you guys? Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we go up to the table, and, as you know, this isn't cheap. This is like, I don't know, like $25 or $50. I mean, it's a lot of money.
Just to get his autograph, or to get into Chiller?
No, to get his autograph. I mean, that's how these guys make. That's how these guys make money. So I think he was either charging $25 or $50. I'm not sure. Maybe somewhere in between. And we're looking for pictures, and God damn it, there were no pictures of Danielson. Okay,
Danielson.
Right. I wanted a picture of him on the stoop with his arms up in the crane stance, okay? But no, he has his headshot, okay? Maybe I think a picture of Johnny from the Outsiders, okay? But case point being, I wanted Danielson. So we bit the bullet anyway. We got his fancy headshot. And when I tell you that Ralph Macchio has the worst celebrity autograph I've ever seen in my life.
What does it look like?
It was like chicken scratch with no flair at all. Nothing. It was
You're paying $50, you want some flair.
It was so
in your signature.
Yeah, it was so bad that my friend was mocking it as we were walking away from the table. That's how bad his signature was. So I feel good that Ralph Macchio is back on TV, and he's going to be back on YouTube.
YouTube Red, I think, or the Cobra Kai series. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm in for that. So good for Ralph Macchio. Jack, I want to ask you a question that I'm sure Vicki has as well. What was going on in your life that you never saw The Wire or Treme?
Well, it's probably because my son was. The Wire was born. The Wire came out like around 2005, 2006, maybe
earlier, way earlier.
Earlier, okay. Yeah, I guess for some reason I just never followed it once my son was born, there were very limited kind of like non-family shows that my wife and I watched, and Boardwalk Empire was one of them. So I never got around to really to. I mean, now I watch whatever because I just stay up late, but for some reason I just never got around to it.
Okay, all right. Well,
that needs to be in your rotation. You have to start watching that.
Yeah,
seminal.
Yeah, dude. It's part of like TV history canon. You know what I mean? You got to do it.
And several of the same actors from The Deuce, including the great Lester Freeman from The Wire. What's his name? Clark Peters shows up in the finale of The Deuce. I was so happy to see him. I'm always happy to see him.
In fact, in my notes, I wrote down a bunch of notes, and I just wrote Chief with 2 exclamation points. Now, all right, so Vicki knows what that means, but go ahead, Jack.
Oh yeah, no, I had because the two of you have experience with reporting. What did you think of the reporter and subplot of The Deuce? What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, I'm a nitpicker. The one thing that was annoying me is that they were making it out like this had to be like on deadline. It's going into tomorrow, blah, blah. This is a kind of feature that can literally run at any point in the early mid 1970s. So I didn't really get the, I understand why they're saying we need people on the record. We need this, we need that. But I completely understood why the editor was like, no, we're going to make it a feature and that's going to be that. I wasn't really bothered by it other than the fake time element.
Yeah,
and I liked the character. I liked Natalie Paul playing Sandra Washington a lot.
Yeah, I liked her too, but I felt like we were supposed to care more than the show wanted us to care more than I actually did.
Mm. Yeah. And I also liked the romance with her and Chris Alston, which it's one of the few real genuine exchanges of romance on the show, and so I like seeing that.
Who we last saw on The Walking Dead is Bob.
Ugh,
Bob the alcoholic.
Bob the alcoholic.
Well, actually, speaking of The Walking Dead, I'm going to tie it to Sunday night's episode of The Walking Dead where they opened with that completely pointless montage close-up of the faces, and they ended it with it. And I was like, that was so useless. But the way they did it at the end of The Deuce, which is very similar to, I think, how they ended The Wire, where you see people just sort of in their, living their life, not really happy with a lot of the choices that they're making, and just really beautiful cinematography and acting by everyone. I thought it was beautiful.
Well, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't the season finale for each one of the seasons of The Wire kind of end with a montage of sorts?
It might have. The only one that's really, standing out to me is the series finale. It probably did, but I remembered very distinctly the series finale.
Yeah, without a doubt. And Treme also did that a lot too, and which I loved, man. I really missed that show. That was a great
Except
show.
One thing you didn't like about Treme, and the same thing you didn't like about The Deuce, is Chris Coy.
Oh my God!
Actor with negative charisma. God. He played Paul, the gay bartender.
Oh,
negative charisma. I don't understand why this guy is cast.
You didn't like that subplot? Well, I guess there wasn't much of a subplot. But
I didn't like the subplot. I just don't. This actor
hate him.
Bothers me.
No, look,
it bothers me.
No, he's the worst. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry if he's listening, but it's just he brings nothing.
It's not that he brings nothing. No, he sucks energy out of the scene. Yeah, he takes away stuff.
This guy showed up on *Halt and Catch Fire* this past season. I wanted to shoot the TV. Yeah.
Oh, really? He shows up because I'm in season 3 of *Halt and Catch Fire*. I have to catch up.
Look at you.
But we have to talk once I finish the series.
We do. But yeah, so he shows up on the last season. It's kind of like a hot shot, Microsoft
investigative journalst. Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm talking about Treme. Sorry, the investigative journalist.
He sucked in that role.
Right. But I think maybe the whole point of having because they had that episode where they go to the gay porno premiere,
right?
Which is I guess it's supposed to be the precursor to the Deep Throat and these big premieres that were happening.
I think it was an actual movie.
I think I read it was Boys in the Sand. I think I read it was an actual porno film that came out at that time, and it predated Deep Throat, which obviously we all know had a huge cultural impact.
And which I thought was very, very clever. They ended with it. I got it as soon as I saw the Linda Lovelace stand-in. Oh, they're going to Deep Throat. But I also thought it also reminded me of the whole Don Draper finale moment with the Coke ad. Yeah. There's this great reveal, and you're like, oh my God, that is so inevitable.
Yeah, but Vic, and
I liked it.
But you know that HBO historical dramas do this. Boardwalk Empire did this every week. So it wasn't that much of a shock to me that they were weaving in these historical elements. And, as you know, like Vinyl did the same thing. I don't know if you watched Vinyl, but I mean, this is what they do, and they do it well. And, I love HBO for even trying to do this stuff, because it gives it a sense of authenticity. And, I'm just waiting for, a young Curtis Lewa to show up in the Deuce in one of the bars. You know what I mean? Let's talk briefly about the nudity in the show. And then I know this is nothing new, nudity on cable and what have you, but like, what did you guys feel about the level of nudity or sexual activity portrayed on the screen? Was it gratuitous? Was it necessary? Was it just right? What do you think?
I wasn't bothered by it at all. I don't think it was probably more nudity and sex than Game of Thrones, quite frankly. Okay. Although there was a lot more male frontal nudity than I think most people are used to.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I felt I think having read interviews and stuff, it looks like they weren't trying to be gratuitous. I mean, and the way you see sex portrayed in this series, it's not erotic. I mean, you're seeing it of like, and all its kind of like ugliness. Well, not ugliness, but you know what I mean. It's not portrayed in like the only, like you said, the scene with Alston and the reporter, that was really the only like passionate, genuine, like authentic moment, sexual moment between two characters. The other. It felt like they didn't linger. It wasn't done in a way that was that felt like it was exploiting the character, the actors, and I think Roxana Dawson directed one of the episodes, and I think the pilot was directed. I forget who directed the pilot, but there were a few like female directors who directed this series. It wasn't just male directors. So I don't have a problem. Obviously, I don't have a problem with the nudity, but yeah, I think for people like who haven't watched the show, thinking that it's all going to be gratuitous, it really isn't. I mean, obviously, you do see a lot, but it's not done in a way that I felt was gratuitous.
Okay. It's been renewed for season 2, so that's good. Luckily, the stories have been set up. We know where everything is going. This way, next time it starts, we're going to jump right in, and we'll be able to follow the plot a little bit better, right? I mean, this had a lot of setup.
There are a lot of characters to keep track of, yeah.
It did have a lot of setup, and that actually, the other thing that I have to ding it for a little bit is that I never really felt like it was building toward anything. Like, I mean, and Treme didn't build either, but Treme just generally had a more of just character-driven, anecdotal feel to it. And this one had a lot of plot, but it just didn't quite build.
I agree with Treme. Treme was more kind of like a novel, so
impressionistic.
Yeah, and I could ding the Deuce a little bit for that as well, because I knew we only had 8 episodes, and I was like, all right, guys, just ramp this up a little bit because we don't have a lot of time here. All right, well, I think I've asked or spoke to you guys about everything I had down on my notes. I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything. Guys?
Yeah, I think from the interview that I read, I think that there's a 3-season plan for this. I think the second season is supposed to be the late 70s, 77, 78. Oh, yeah,
there's going to be a time jump, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, so we're going to jump a few years ahead and see where these characters are, and then I think the third season is going to be the 80s, and then so I as far as I know, that's the long-term plan for this show,
which is kind of interesting because didn't the porn industry kind of like jump to Southern California in the 80s?
Interesting.
And so I mean, like, what is left in New York? I don't know.
It's kind of interesting. Like you said about like a million interesting things just now. I don't know what to react to first, but. But, Halt and Catch Fire did the same thing. Like, they jumped ahead
several times
and a few years each time. So by the time the show ends, we're in 1997, 98. So that's really interesting. And guess what? We just may see a young Curtis Lewa if they're doing the jump to 1980. I really hope we get to see a little bit of that Studio 54 scene,
yeah, I think we may see that.
That's really cool. Okay. You made my night, Jack.
Well, I'm happy to.
Okay. Vicki, what's up? Anything else?
No, I think we covered it. My hatred of Chris Coy. And what?
He's easy to hate. He's easy to hate.
Oh my God. I feel bad that I'm being so mean to him,
don't,
but like
don't. He's got to work on it. I'm sorry, dude. If you're listening, work on that charisma.
If he's listening.
Yeah, like he's really listening to this. So, Vicki and I are probably going to do a special Real Housewives of New Jersey episode.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm serious. I didn't forget about that. Jack, you can hang out if you want. I mean, I know you don't watch the show, but we're probably going to do that at some point during the season.
Okay.
Yeah, 5th episode tomorrow night. I'm recapping it as we speak.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, guys, we will be back soon. Jack, Twitter handle, let everyone know. Jack?
Dead silence.
Sorry, did I lose you? Oh, okay. At Jack Lugo 1.
What was that, Jack? What was going on there? Did you space?
My mic must have cut out because I heard you, but I guess you didn't hear me.
All right.
So yeah, my Twitter handle's at Jack Lugo 1.
Okay. And Miss Hyman, what is your Twitter handle?
At Vicki Hy, Vickihy.
All right. Well, that will wrap it up for this edition of the Pop Culture Juke Joint. As always, it's been fun. We will be back soon. Vicki, Jack, thanks a lot. Talk soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Enjoyed this episode of the Pop Culture Juke Joint? Then don't forget to tip the barkeep by subscribing and reviewing us on iTunes and Stitcher. Also, for some sizzling noir tales, head on over to Amazon to check out Anthony's hard-boiled fiction, available in print, digital, and audiobook formats. On social media, follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony Venutolo or like his page on Facebook. For everything else, please visit his webpage at www.anthonyvenutolo.com. We'll see you next week.